Welcome to Now It's Legal podcast, where we not only talk about what's happening in college sports and NIL deals, but also people who took a chance on themselves. And here today we have Andy House, who is an entrepreneur, car enthusiast, hustler, and overall badass. Andy, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, it's great to have you. So, question, who is Andy House, and where did you get started?
I should have read through your list a little more.
It's all right. Where did you?
So basically, I got my start. I grew up in Nacogdoches. I graduated, or I didn't graduate, so I need to redo that. So I grew up in Nacogdoches and went to Central Heights High School, and over there was a guy that was selling cars on the side of the road, and Tommy Wells was his name. And so I stopped in and chatted with him, and he was buying cars from the salvage auction, rebuilding them, and then reselling them. And so I made pretty good friends with him over a short period of time. He took me into his business and showed me how to repair cars as far as paint and body and stuff like that. So while I was in high school, I started, repairing friends' cars in school, repaints and stuff like that. And then when I got out of school, Tommy helped me get my first job in a body shop over there. And at that point, I ended up leaving from the body shop, going to a car lot, and I learned the car lot side of things. And, so I knew the car lot side and the repair side of vehicles. And then I ended up opening up my own shop to where I purchased cars that were wrecked, rebuilt them, resold them, put them on notes. And that's kind of where it started at.
Now, we're in Lufkin, Texas. Now, have you always been in this shop, or where did you?
No, so I started out in a shop that was there was a Castleberry's Furniture over here, and they had these warehouses in the back, and there was like 4 of them. And so I rented one of those stalls for $300. And so fresh out of high school and after working a few jobs in Nacogdoches, like I explained, I went into that building and started doing paint and body work over there. And within a matter of a couple of months, had about $20,000 in my account. And so then I leased out another shop, which is across from the paper mill here in Lufkin. And I continued doing paint and body work there, and then it just growed from that building to another building to another to where I'm finally to this point now.
Yeah. So how long have you been in this building?
About 5 months.
So what separates you from other people who are in this business?
I just do things a little bit different than everybody else does. Most times you walk into a car dealership, it's a car dealership experience. You're pulling up, you've got your car salesman running out to try to sell you a car. They're trying to sell you every ad they can add onto the list to overprice you, gap insurance and everything else. And it's like, I didn't want to be that guy. Sometimes I just raise the door in this place. People walk in, look, you don't have to buy, but that's what I try to do different. Buy stuff that is different, period. Or I just try to get into specializing in certain things at times. So.
Right, yeah. Right. So what would you tell somebody who wanted to, get into this industry, or they want to do what Andy does?
You need to start out with a lot of money. It does, you're like, how much you got invested in cars right now? $1.5 million. Man, you must have a lot of cars. No, that's like 5 cars,
Right.
So it's like, have a lot of money or have somebody that believes in you, and that's, what has also helped me get through times and get ahead was, having somebody that believed in me financially, so.
Yeah, so is there any person that you can name that did believe in you that comes to mind, or has it been pretty much, self-determination?
There's been quite a few people that's believed in me in the past. One of them was an ex-business partner of mine come in, and I'd met him through a friend of mine who introduced me to him. And I was having trouble with finances at that time, and he said, hey, let's go talk to a friend of mine. And so went over and spoke to this guy, and within, I think it was 15 minutes of meeting him, he loaned me $128,000. And that was for a new business that I wanted to buy. And so, went and bought the business, and from that point on, I grew some trust with him. And we ended up over a 7-8 year period doing a little over $40 million in business. And so that was somebody that believed in me. And then currently now, I do have a business partner as well, which is a plastic surgeon. And I did some prison time recently, and when I got out broke. I didn't have any money, and so he put the money up for me to start this business, which has grown. It's doubled every year in income. So
that's amazing. So you've doubled every year since
every
you've been
year.
on.
Yep, it's doubling. This year is a little bit different story with the COVID, downhill fall we're on, high interest rates, and the overpriced cars last year. But this will be one year that's not going to double, but it'll do better. It'll do better than it did last year, but it's not going to double last year's.
Right, right. So we're talking about trust. We're talking about buying, selling cars. So what is your worst buy? Was it during 2020? Was it before that? Ever came out on the negatives?
Yeah, I would probably say it's not necessarily something I would call a worst buy. I guess, as far as I bought it and I lost money or was just a total complete turd, it was back in 2007, 8, 9, 10. I was buying and selling Ford GTs, and so I started specializing in them. I bought and sold over like 200. I'd buy them wrecked at the auction, fix them, and resell them, and my profit margins were anywhere from 20 to 50,000 a car. Well, at one point, it was getting to where people stopped driving them, so they stopped crashing them. Then I couldn't buy any more wrecked ones. Well, I was kind of obsessed with the car's platform and how much money I could make off of them. So then I decided, you know what, I'm going to step out and start buying ones that are unwrecked on Facebook, not Facebook, Auto Trader, eBay, cars.com, stuff like that, buy them and flip them. And so the average guy that's selling that car, he doesn't have a lot of time on his hands. He's going to go out, take 4 or 5 pics, post it up. Mm-hmm. And so my thing was just to make the money off the photography side of it. Buy the car, clean it up, take, at that time on eBay, you could run 22 photos or something like that. And so I'd put 22 photos up, real good description, always answer the phone and discuss. And so anyway, one of the cars I decided to purchase off of Auto Trader, I called the guy up, negotiated a deal, and then had him send me a copy of the title. I did my due diligence.
Right.
He sent me a copy of his dealer's license. The title had the dealer's license on, on the title versus the dealer's license.
Gotcha.
There. And so anyway, I wired him the money, $125,000 to a bank in Kentucky. Within the next day, I'm like, hey, what happened to the carrier part, because I'd wired in. At that time, I wasn't shipping cars, so I wired in for the shipping. It was another dealer. And so anyway, day 2 comes, and I'm like, look, just give me an address. I'm going to send a carrier to pick it up. At that point, his phone was canceled. And it was a scam. I got frauded out of $125,000. I would say a year later, him and 12 other individuals, they were out of Germany. So even though I wired the money to a Kentucky bank, he went straight over there, pulled the money out of the bank and closed the account. But the FBI had located his IP address in Germany. And so him and 12 other people had frauded millions off of people on Auto Trader and stuff like that. And so they got arrested, and I never did get restitution back. Even though they were hit with restitution, I'm sure they went back to Germany. They didn't pay after they got out of prison, they didn't pay their restitution. And so I'm still at that loss today.
But I'm sure you've done what you've usually done and made it back. And
yeah, yep. It doesn't take long to make that back, but that's a pretty hard hit to take. At that time, it was a really hard hit to take.
Right. So when you are down bad, just like that,
yep.
What comes to mind is incentives. Have you ever provided any incentives because you're trying to push and sell a car, quicker than usual, or you have, just an idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just.
At that time, I wasn't doing any incentive stuff. It was just continue business, work a little harder, buy more cars, buy more inventory to cover up what you lost.
Gotcha. So you were talking about the Ford GTs. You said people quit crashing them, so that you had to kind of fade away from that business and kind of steer your direction in another avenue. Is that where Dodge Vipers come into play?
Well, also the Dodge Vipers had come in. I started buying a few random Ferraris, Lamborghinis. I bought an Enzo, I bought an F40, I bought a Porsche GT3. So I just started branching into different models and found that that's where I kind of found the fact that anything you're dealing with up in the higher end produces a bigger return. So the bigger gamble, the bigger return. And also, when I was selling cars that were, say, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, you'd have an individual come in, kick the tires, have to get a loan, get denied on a loan. Then when you sell it to them, they want you to warranty their alternator 6 months later, stuff like that. So you had to go through all that. And then I found when you're buying and selling a Ford GT, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, any of that, those buyers, they don't come in, they don't kick tires. I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten a text, hey, I'm interested in this car, what do we need to do to proceed? You send them over some docs, they sign the docs, you send them wiring instructions, you wire them the money, or they wire you the money, and then you ship them the car. You never even speak to them one time on the telephone, and so I found that's the easier avenue to take. Plus, you're going to sell 10 $10,000 cars to make the money that you're going to sell off of one car. So you've got one car, one customer to deal with, one set of paperwork, and you don't have to deal with financing. So it's very rare when you're selling cars over 100 grand that you're really financing. It does happen, but it's just, most of the time it's pretty rare.
Gotcha. So is there any car that, or let me rephrase that. Do you remember the first car that you sold? It obviously wasn't an Enzo. It wasn't a Bugatti.
No.
It wasn't a Porsche. What
No,
was it?
my first car was, I had to have been 18. And like I said, when I met that guy, Tommy, and he was showing me how to rebuild cars, one of the first ones was an Acura Integra, a little two-door. And I'd gotten pulled over and, exhibition acceleration, and that car actually thought it was fast. But that was probably one of the first ones, and I think it was a Chevrolet Beretta after that.
Oh, boy.
And then I also kind of figured out how to buy something and then trade it for something worth more, car-wise, and steadily continue to grow,
Yeah, so you repeat that process over and over again to then get to the Dodge Vipers, the Ford GTs, the Lamborghinis, and things like that nature.
Yeah, and speaking all the way back to the first, now that we're sitting here talking about it, it reminded me, I bought, they had a peddler, which is the paper back then because you didn't have internet. So I picked up a peddler, and that's where everybody would, they put their cars in this newspaper for free. And I bought a BMW, I don't know what it was, 525 or something. I don't know what it was back in the day. And so I bought it for $800, had a bad alternator on it. And I ended up just cleaning it up, charging the battery on it real good. And I drove it quite a few times. And then I ended up charging the battery real good. And I sold it for, I think, about $3,000.
800 to 3,000.
800 to 3,000. So then I took my 3,000 and spent the 3,000 on a $3,000 car that I turned into $5,000. And that's how, going through high school, people was like, he's a drug dealer. No, I just learned real early how to buy something and sell it for more, and just steadily continue to grow what small finances I had into bigger finances.
How do you get people to trust you when you're at such a young age and you're handling these type of cars?
Back then it wasn't that big of a thing. Generally a car sale back then, there was no internet, there was no texting somebody. It's like you put it back into the peddler and then somebody shows up, you've got the title in hand, you've got the car, and they go down the road and test drive it with you and pay you in cash and leave.
So, I'm switching gears a little bit, but what's the car that you've had, or maybe you even have now, with the most horsepower, or maybe even the most fun?
So currently right now I have this Calvo 1300 back here, and I would say out of all the cars I've owned, and I've had a little bit of everything, I think the Calvo Vipers are the funnest. They're just a blast to drive. They're still the standard transmission. It's not paddle shift. And the 1300 horse, most of your twin turbo cars, they make boost on the top end, versus if you're, you got a Whipple or something, it makes it all the time.
Right.
But it just seems to be with the Motec setup that's on my 1300 Calvo car and the twin turbos that it makes boost almost pretty much instantly. And so it's amazing.
So you have a car that's creating boost on the front end, and then some that are creating it all the way through.
Yeah.
Do you remember that first time that you got that adrenaline rush where you're like, oh, I can do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I had and this was, man, I don't know, probably 20 years ago. I'd gotten a Viper that was crashed, and it had a Pro Charger on it, and that was the one that got me. And how I'd got it, the guy had floored the car, his gas pedal stuck under the floor mat, and so when he let out, the car kept going, and he tried to gain control of it, lost, spun around backwards, hit a telephone pole. So I took the whole back of the car on, stuck it on, and so that was my first experience, like real horsepower.
Real horsepower. So
which then was probably 500-600,
500-600. So
yeah, and now I've had stuff that's 2100 horsepower, and that I still can't get used to that. 2100 horsepower is a lot to deal with. So.
Yeah, I feel like stuff breaks.
Stuff does break, and that was another Calvo car, and people say, why do Calvo cars break all the time? I mean, you can't stick 2,000-3,000 horsepower to something and expect something to not break. Yeah. I mean, there's always a weak point.
Yeah, absolutely. So how often are you going through tires when you're working with a vehicle like that?
It's pretty often. And tires aren't cheap. A set of rear tires on that car, it costs you about $1,200. So, but yeah, I just tend to try not to drive them a lot. So that's kind of the good thing about this showroom. My cars stay clean.
Right.
And so I know that if I pull it outside, it's going to get dirty, and I want it clean to put it back in. So it's like, do I drive it? And then you're like, nah, I just let it sit there.
Let somebody else deal with it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So have you broken any, world records or on accident or on purpose?
No, I haven't broke any records. I've done some drag racing in my time, and then the poker runs, and I did a recent event with a TV show with this car as well. And I guess we'll see what the outcome is when that comes out. But no records broken.
No records broken, but. Have you ever met any, car enthusiasts, Doug, Ed Bolian, Rob Pitts, some people know him as Rabbit. Kind of, how was your relationship with them, and how did you either meet them, or you guys just know each other from the internet, or?
Mostly internet. I've talked to Ed Bolian quite a few times to come do a couple of shows with him. Haven't ever met him in person, but like I said, I've had probably 15, 20 telephone calls with him.
Yeah. I learned who Ed was through VinWiki, and then I learned what a cannonball run was.
Yeah.
Has that ever interested you?
Well, I learned what a cannonball run was I did a couple of TV shows with Richard Rollins from Gas Monkey Garage. He's a friend of mine. I sold him a Ford GT that was on the television show as well. And that's where I'd heard about Cannonball Run for the most part, besides the movie that had come out. Didn't really learn about what Cannonball was until Richard's story that he told online about his Cannonball Run. So that is something I'd definitely like to do at some point.
Yeah.
It may be in the cards in the next year or two.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
you definitely need somebody to get that on film and follow you around if you're going to be doing it. So on the spot, if you were to just wake up one day and say, I'm doing a Cannonball Run, what car would you pick?
I would take my Calvo Viper.
You would take your Calvo Viper.
I think it's that reliable. So really,
yep. Do you know who your right-hand man would be?
It would be my business partner, which is Ben Beckert. He's a lot better driver than I am, and he's probably just about as ignorant as I am on the highway, and so that would be who I'd use.
They say the average miles per hour is around 155 to 170. Consistently on average, and I think there was one person who tried to stop as little as possible. That's like the name of the game.
Yeah.
That he had somebody pull up while he was driving and fill up his tank.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So
I need to watch some more of that.
Yeah.
So Ben does. I'll leave from here to go to Cars and Coffee or Poker Runs to go to Houston, and he'll leave from Beaumont to go to Houston. And a couple of his trips, he's carried a friend of ours with him, and he's videoed. And so from Beaumont to Houston in his Ford GT, has clocked his speedo at 228 miles an hour consistently. And that's something I haven't done on the highway. I've been 186 miles an hour on the highway, but not to. And I think the last poker run I did with Ben was the only poker run I did with Ben. I said, I'm not getting in the car with you again. I think we were at 180, 90 miles an hour. An 18-wheeler cut out in front of us. Another car cut in this lane. Had to hit that brake so hard the car it felt like it was shaking apart. And I'm like, I'm done. I am done. I'll do all the driving. So,
yeah. So, I mean, that almost sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your favorite car movie? Or maybe there's multiple.
I would say my favorite car movie is, it kind of goes along with what I do, is I think it's called Used Cars. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's competition from, I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's such an old movie, but there's a car dealer on one side of the road and there's another car dealer over here, and one gets into doing TV ads, and the one guy that's not doing the TV ad is sitting at home, and the ad comes up on the TV, and the dealer had walked across the street to his lot, and the app prices were advertised on the window, and he said, "You see this car? He wants $19.95. That's too fucking high." And he takes a shotgun and he cocks it and blows the window out of his competing car dealer's car while he's and the other guy's watching it on the TV and starts flipping it out. That has to be my favorite car movie.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, most definitely. I got to watch that. What's the name of it again?
I think it's called Used Cars.
Used Cars.
It's an old probably 80s movie.
So what car do you regret selling the most?
Probably the Ferrari Enzo I had. I had the Ferrari Enzo that Eddie Griffin crashed in the movie Red Line. It was owned by Daniel Sadek, a friend of mine, Matthew Groner. He's out of Houston. He bought the car wrecked, repaired it, and then started running this ad, Save the Enzo's project, and that ended up blemishing the car, and he wasn't able to sell it, and so I purchased that car. And the reason I say I wished I'd have been able to keep it, is that at that time I gave $725,000 for it. It's recently changed hands for I think $3 million, and then I put a year's worth of driving in that car. It was just such a blast. It roll-up windows, no radio, it's carbon interior. It was the flip-up doors.
Yeah.
I would pull up to the local car event here, which is really small, flip the doors up and let kids jump in it and, take their pics and whatever. So that was probably one of my favorites.
Do you have a favorite, colored car?
Favorite color.
Besides that Dodge Viper that's all iridescent.
I would say, the black one back here. That's what I like. The stealth look, the black, the big wing, the big splitter and canards and stuff on it.
Yeah.
It just looks race car, even if you're not driving it,
Right.
It looks like it's going fast.
Yeah. They say there's nothing better than a clean black car.
That's right. But there's hardly ever a clean black car.
That's why you got to get them while you can.
Yep.
If Andy wasn't in the buying and selling business, what business do you think he'd be in?
I've always wanted to do bar business,
Like owning a bar?
Yeah, not like a rundown, scrub bar. Some high-end, bar is what I'd like to have. Somewhere off on a beach,
Any particular beach that you would just say?
Me, honestly, if I could do it, I would be down in Destin, owning and running a bar down there.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite type of liquor or beer that you have a choice?
I drink Patron every day.
Every day.
Yep. Green Label.
Green Label. Is it Reposado? Is it Añejo, or is it just kind of?
I can't even remember. I just know
I
just know it's Patron.
I just know
anything
it's good.
else would give me a headache.
Oh yeah, I saw you post on Facebook. You were having these shots, and then the very next day you posted Excedrin, Advil.
It was. So what happened was the local bar ran out of Patron, and then the bad part of it, I was mixing Fireball shots. I didn't start the Fireball shots. Somebody brought 6 of them to the table, and we all hit them, and then somebody else at the table said, get some more, because we just had a crowd of people that just come up and started sitting at the table with us. And so I went and grabbed 6 more myself. Then the waitress started doing fireball shots with us. And then my buddy showed up. He was drinking Crown, double Crown. And so he was like, he kept telling me to take a drink of his Crown. So I was drinking his Crown. Well, when they run out of my Patron, which doesn't give me a headache, they had a different liquor that they served to me. And they told me they were doing it. And I think I had about 6 more glasses of that. And it was over, man. The next day was, I think, honestly, I had a hangover for 3 days. I haven't had one of those in quite a while.
Oh my gosh!
It's a good time.
Yeah, no, that's got to be a good time.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
hey, when you run out and you're switching it up,
Yep.
I mean, you already know what you're doing.
Yeah,
but at
you
that
can't
point, you
switch
don't care.
liquor. Yeah. Yep.
So if you could like debunk or prove wrong something about a misconception in your business, what would it be?
The biggest thing that bothers me, I think, and there are some out there, but there's some in every business. There's some in law enforcement business, whatever, is when people say used car dealers are crooks,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessarily true. There's a lot of times that I've sold stuff and, everything is sold with as is, where he is. You don't get a warranty. You sign all this paperwork and it leaves out. And then something goes wrong, like the same day, the next day. You didn't know that was there, but the customer automatically assumes that that was a fault with the car and you knew about it. And, and it's not. And so if it's something that, logic tells you, you know what, that could have been wrong before it rolled out of here, I'm going to handle it, and I'll handle it. That's something I used to not do back in the day, but now it's like I hate when I get a car in and I say, hey, does the car have any blemishes? How are the tires, all that? And then it shows up and the tires are wore out. It's got blemishes on it, so you end up having to pay for paint work, tires, all that stuff. I can't, send a car out to a customer like that. So it cuts back in my profit,
Mm-hmm.
but it leaves a happy customer who comes back. And that's what I look for, is the comeback customer,
Okay.
because I've dealt with them. I know they pay, and so you want to keep that person happy.
No, absolutely. Has there ever been a time where you've sold a car and it comes back, not even a day later?
What, as far as return back?
Right, sure. And they're like, no, I realize I wired you the money and I don't like it as much as I did on Monday.
There's been some that, you'll full disclose them.
Right.
And, one recently, I'm like, this car is a 10-footer, meaning the paint looks good from 10 foot. And then the car shows up to the guy and he's like, this wasn't a 10-footer, this is a 20-footer. Well, you got the idea of what I posted, so it needed a paint job. So, and that's something I'm not kicking any money back for. I disclosed it. Every post I put up will have 80 photos on a Facebook listing. And, that's a lot of photos.
That's
Nobody
a lot
else
of
does that. But 80 photos, a video, sometimes 2-3 videos. So it's like you see every angle out of it. And, that even the undercarriage, I take pics of the undercarriage. So it's like you see every part of it. And, if there's something wrong with it that I see, I'm going to handle it.
Right.
I'm not just going to say, well, maybe the customer won't notice that. It's kind of like my own car that I'm doing for myself back there. It seems like every time I turn a corner, there's something else wrong with it. So.
Right. And what is the car you're doing for yourself?
I'm doing a twin turbo LS swap Lambo that I picked up. It was an ICT billet car, and man, it's every time you remove a panel, you find something wrong with it, and it's something that I'm keeping for myself, for the business. And it's like I can't roll up to an event and they're like, damn, that's trash,
Right.
So it's like I got to continue to fix everything right on it.
Right,
So.
yeah. And so, and I've seen all your updates via Facebook, and that's really kind of how I've been following you for years now. So how has Facebook helped you, and how long have you been using Facebook?
So I would say about 10 years ago, most of my marketing was being done through, and 10 years and prior was being done through eBay and Instagram.
Right.
And Instagram was a real big supplier. I was grabbing a lot of big buyers off of there that were buying cars from me. eBay was the one prior to that. I think I've got,
You got
12 million in sales through eBay.
Whoa.
And I started doing eBay when eBay wasn't a thing, and everybody said, what is eBay? And
Right.
oh,
What's
you're going to
the
get
internet?
scammed on eBay. And so anyway, I was doing eBay, and so that's where the big part of the money come from. But within the last 8 years, it's flipped to Facebook. Everybody is on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook Marketplace. And that's why Facebook is doing so much better than Instagram is on car stuff, is because Instagram doesn't have a marketplace, a classified ad. So
Right.
you can post a pic, but if your pic doesn't go viral, nobody sees that you have a car for sale or whatever. And the problem is now is during COVID, when $7 trillion of free money was given out, everybody thought they were rich, and so it drove the prices of cars up, and everybody become a Facebook flipper. It's like, let me sell your car, and so it caused a lot of competition. People who aren't dealers, people who don't have dealer's license. I actually have a salesman that works for me now, and met him through Facebook, and kind of like yourself, he's got a good attitude, a positive vibe, and he's like, let me sell some of your cars, and I'm like, let's try it.
Right.
Have you ever thought about having an off-site car salesman that lives in Dallas and you're here? And it's like, because the old school mind tells you your car dealer needs to be sitting in here at a desk. And so I'm like, okay. And so what I do is every time I post something, I'll forward him all of the pics, the listing. He copies and pastes it to his page, but then he goes one step further. And it's what I do as well, but now I've kind of let him take it over. He will post on every platform he can find. If it's a Lamborghini, it's on every Lamborghini marketplace platform. It's on Marketplace. It's on his deal. And he's not only doing my stuff, he's doing a lot of other people's stuff. And he's sitting out of his house doing this. And it's pretty smart. So when he sells a car for me, I'll send him a check, a Cash App, a PayPal, whatever it is, and pay him per car. And it works out better for me because what he does is he finds the buyer, he gets the deposit, then he turns over my phone number. So I'm not dealing with 100 people calling for a car. Half of them aren't buying or 90% of them aren't buying. He gets it all the way down to the nitty gritty, sends it to me, I close the deal. Man, that is worth money all day long. So,
Yeah, so, I mean, he's not really a middleman. He is really busting his ass.
Yeah, he's almost the front man. So,
up until point of sale.
Yeah, exactly right. Then he's cut out of it. I take it from there, handle the paperwork and all that stuff, the financial transaction and whatever else.
Absolutely. So do you remember the first time making a website or an article? I know your most recent one on Car Buzz with your 1987 Porsche 944 LS swap.
Yep.
But do you remember your first article or one that sticks out to you?
So yeah, one of the first articles I had, a friend of mine called me up and he said, hey, there's this Steve Saleen owned Ford GT for sale, and it was tungsten gray, and it was a repaint. So it was a pre-production car that was not up for sale. Steve had gotten it off of Ford during the production of the Ford GTs, and the reason it had changed colors, which was the solid Gulf blue, had no stripes, no orange stripes, no roundels, none of that stuff on it. The reason it was tungsten gray, Steve said, let's change the color for 2006. It was a 2005 model car, so he painted the car tungsten gray and talked Ford into making that a color for 2006. So this car was like wired up with speaker wire, because like I said, it's a pre-production. Wasn't supposed to be a titled car. Most of the pre-production cars were not titled cars. This one ended up with a title. And he said, let's buy this car and sell it. And I said, all right. And so he purchased the car actually and then sent it to me. And then I was like, you know what? There's a company called the GT guys. They were the ones who originally worked on the Ford GTs from the start. And so I said,
like they assembled the GT?
Yeah, they were part of the process, worked for the Ford GT plant. And so I was like, so they, after it all closed down, they opened up what was called the GT guys. And so they started doing the repairs on any wrecked cars that were wrecked. And so I said, the best thing to do with this car, send it to the GT guys, have them document. I had them make them document the tear down, the repaint to back to the original color, throw the original wheels back on it. It had no center caps on there. And then there was a guy called GT Joey out of New York, and GT Joey had wrote the SVT books for Ford GT. And he was all over the forum, and me and him had made pretty good friends. And he said, look, send the car to me and let me do GTs at the barn with it, and I'm going to do your own book, and you'll be down in the Ford GT history book, the part 2 book. And I was like, it's going to cost me shipping and whatever else. Right. Let's do it. So I shipped it up there. Well, after I got the car back with the book, and then, it had its own book, PB1-3, then I decided to run an article in DuPont Registry. That cost me a couple of grand.
Yeah, it does.
And so now I've connected, you got a pre-production car that Steve Saleen bought from Ford. It had the clear check, which was $100 grand. you stack all this documentation. Stories make cars worth more. So you stacked all that documentation, throwed it up. That car made us, I think, 125 grand. That car made us 100 grand. And it was like, wow. So yeah, doing publications like that are pretty good. So
yeah,
but they're a gamble whether or not they're going to produce anything or not. So
right.
But another one I did, but I don't know if you want to hear another one.
No,
So,
go. Yeah. So how have you stacked your documentation?
So another one was Camilo Pardo designed the Ford GT for Ford. He was the actual designer, and if you look up CamiloPardo.com, he done like 6 of his own cars. They're called Signature Series, which means he took the cars after Ford GT production quit. Right. He repainted them his own colors and designs. And so he had one that he was personally bought, which was a funny story. I bought the car as a silver car, sold it to Marino Performance Motors out of Florida. Okay. And then a week later, Camilo came in and bought the car from him and drove it back to Detroit. And I was like, fuck, if I'd have just hung on to that car another week, Camilo would have bought it for me. That'd be so cool to have the designer buy a car for me, because I'd stood in line for a couple of for like an hour, I guess a couple of months, 6 months back to that at a Detroit rally, Ford GT rally, just to get his autograph. And so anyway, I get a call one day, and it was from Camilo, and I didn't have his phone number. It was a Detroit number. It called in and said, "Hey, Andy, this is Camilo." And I was like, "I know who you are. I mean, you can't, not recognize his voice." And I was like, "I stood in line to get your autograph one time." And he said, "Well, listen, I was told you were the guy to call on GTs. I got a car that I bought. I wrecked it. I did my own Signature Series on it, and I'm looking to get rid of it, and I'm having trouble because of the accident history on it." And so at that time, I called my business partner, and I said, "Look, Camilo called on this car." He's a big Camilo fan as well. And I said, "What do you think?" And I don't remember, maybe 150, 55 grand, something like that. I need to go back and look at my documentation on that. And he had just done a video in the car called Around the World. No, it's called Full Circle. And so it's how he designed the car for Ford, and then he did his own car.
Right.
And, it's just a full circle deal on Camilo.
Right.
And I was like, so now I've already got the story linked up, and it's on YouTube. It was on a popular YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I already have this, and I have the designer that built the car. And then so I said, look, I'll take the car. And my business partner at the time said, "You're going to be lucky to get your money back out of that." And I said, "No, I've got an idea with it." And so I talked Camilo into flying in, picked him up from the airport, and had him, do what we called the last ride. Had a video guy with us, video him going down the highway, and then we videoed him signing the car and stuff like that. And ended up using all that documentation to sell it, and I sold that car, and that car was the one that produced $125,000 profit, just due to documentation, story, and all that.
So what did he say to you when you were like, "Oh, by the way, I sold that for $125,000"? Or I made profit.
So me and Camilo made friends off of that deal. He came in and stayed the night down here. We all got there was a bunch of us. We all got drunk and had a good time and partied. Well, then I decided to do my own personal Signature Series car, which his other cars were tied to the GT guys, so they had the GT guys logo on them as well. We said, look, we don't want the GT guys involved. We just want our own signature car. And he said, well, we'll call it a Camilo Pardo commissioned car. And so I flew him in again. He flew here to Lufkin, and we ended up repainting the car. I videoed it all and stuff like that. He signed the car, and we would go out and get drunk every night. Same in the morning. As soon as he gets up in the morning, the first thing you do is you go and get a Bloody Mary at noon, and then you start drinking Jameson.
Recovery.
That's what he does, yeah. And so we did that, and during one of our trips in the car, we went over to Nacogdoches and back, and I don't remember what we went over there for. And I told him, I said, man, I sold your car, and I made $125,000. He kind of just like stopped, and you made, I made 120, and I think it kind of pissed him off. It's did I know I was going to make $125,000 at the start? No, and including my business partner at the time said, you're going to be lucky to get your money back. But
right,
yeah, he was a little stunted by that one. So
So have you had any cars where you're stacking documentation and you fall in love with the story and you're like, man, I worked so hard to get all this documentation, I don't even want to let go of it? Or is it kind of the opposite?
That was the Camilo car.
Yeah.
I would, if I could have kept that financially at the time, I would still own it right now.
Yeah.
And never sell it, you know.
Yeah.
Just because I was so obsessed with the 4 GTs and then Camilo and the car and the story, you know.
Right.
And because one of my times I was rebuilding a car, I kind of stole one of his paint designs. A friend of mine asked me to do it for his car, and so we copied his paint design. It ended up hitting the major publications online, Jalopnik.
Yep.
And Jalopnik, if you look it up, it'll say Andy House with his rip-off livery 4 GT. And so it's funny when Camilo come down and hung out with me, Camilo was like, yeah, I told him I thought it was cool. You did a good job on it. And I was like, y'all are making me
Look like
out to be a bad guy. And Camilo actually thought it was cool, you know? So, yep.
So
That would be the one I'd have kept.
yeah. So sometimes a publication can kind of push a story another way.
Yep.
When with the reality
Exactly
is-
right. It wasn't as bad as they were trying to make it out to be,
Right.
so.
No, that's mainstream media for you.
Yeah, exactly
So,
right.
So why do you call your shop Area 51 when you're an hour and some change from Houston?
Some of the stuff we haven't discussed, you know, I did some prison time for an incident back in 2009. And so while I was in prison, you know, I ended up with
Car
basically...
incident.
Huh?
A car incident.
Car incident, yeah. Involving a Bugatti Veyron. But while I was in there, I got kind of like PTSD. You know, it's like I knew that when I got out, I didn't want to be around anybody. I went in with 1 million friends, I thought. And then while I was in prison, I found out I had 2 friends, you know. And so when I got out, I knew I just wanted to isolate myself away from everybody. So I come up with the Area 51 design. I had an airplane and a hangar prior to going to prison. I thought I would get out and get an airplane hangar and kind of do some of my business out of there. Ended up not working out, but I ended up on 20 acres out in the middle of nowhere out here. And so the Area 51 fit it because I was
Secluded.
it didn't even have an address, you
Oh,
know.
God.
And I sold, you know, millions of dollars worth of cars out of a 20-acre barn, you know, out of a barn sitting on 20 acres in the middle of nowhere. So,
And now you're here?
yeah, now I'm here, and now the Area 51, you know, we're trying to run the theme here.
Yeah,
But-
you sure
but
are.
I'm
We got-
still in Diboll, Texas. So, yeah, a friend of mine sent me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about it, and you were so stoked to get it.
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
remember that. So, tell me, we're sitting here with an engine block,
Yep.
and this is not the only one.
So, a friend of mine that was into buying and selling Dodge Vipers as well, a real good friend of mine, Hammond, he was like, you know what? You know, they called me the Viper King for the last couple of years. Prior, when I was doing 4 GTs, it was the 4 GT King. So they started calling me the Viper King. I did 58 Vipers last year, you know, bought and sold.
What?
And he was like, who else? You know, these came up for sale, 173 of them on Facebook Marketplace. He said, who would be better to sell these things than you? And he said, let's buy them, ship them to you because they're sitting in Houston, so they're only an hour and a half from here. Get your shipper to pick them up, take them there and sell them. And I said, let's do it. And so purchased all of them, shipped them here, and then I started thinking, man, how hard is it going to be to sell 173 blocks, you know? It's a hard task, so I've had to start coming up with ways to get rid of them. I'm doing a raffle on one now. The other day I posted a car up for sale, and I'm like, you buy this car today, and you get a free engine block. I think that car sold in 58 minutes, and so it shipped
Whoa.
out with the engine block. And then so I said, you know what? I'm going to post this car with 2 engine blocks.
And this is what car is this right here?
And this is a 2013 Dodge Viper GTS that's a twin turbo package as well.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Send me a buyer, you'll get an engine. And then the buyer will get an engine as well. Or if you just call me up and buy the car yourself, I'll send you 2 engines with it. So
So, and this one hasn't moved yet.
it hasn't moved yet. I mean, Friday is the last day I'm running that deal, and you won't get a free engine past Friday.
That deal is running out.
Yeah, exactly. right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, Andy, does anybody owe you money?
There's a lot of people that owe me money that, you know, I don't see ever paying me back.
Right.
So, but yeah, there are some people that owe me money. Yep.
So, Kind of switching gears, I saw you almost cut straight through your finger a couple weeks ago with a hacksaw or whatever that thing was. What's the worst injury you've had working on cars?
Ooh, it wasn't working on cars, but I guess it was last year. No, it was this year. I was working on a set of jet skis in my shop and leaked fuel down into the bottom. And then, I thought it had all dried out, aired out, and it hadn't. And when I went back to start it up, it ignited the fumes that was inside the hole, and my face was over the hole when it ignited. And I've got a video of it, and the building ceiling in that place was 15 foot high. It had the fluorescent light bulbs in there, and when that thing blew up, it burned all the face, all of my skin, my nose hairs, inside my ears. It burnt the layer of skin off of my eyes. It was the worst thing ever. That was the worst.
You have the video of it?
Yeah, I have the video
It's like
of that as
surveillance.
well. Yeah, it was surveillance cameras inside my building. And it was funny, when we paused the video of the flames, it looked like a big gorilla. I didn't know this till, it had to have been 2-3 weeks later. I was back in there working again, and I looked up, and it had blowed the fluorescent light, folded it. The bulbs didn't fall off. It folded, the compression. It blowed my hat probably 15, 20 foot. And the burning never stopped. It just wouldn't go away. I had to continue to put Vaseline on my face. It, like I said, it burnt my eyes, so I couldn't go outside in the sun. That was pretty rough.
That was last year.
Yeah, and so like right now I'm working on changing a fuel pump in this Viper. And what's crazy is the hot and ground wires to a fuel pump are soaked in the tank themselves. I still don't understand how that works, but. So when I got the fuel pump in that car, I wanted to call somebody and be like, hey, you want to come over here and start this car for me? Because all I can think about is blowing my face off again,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Another funny story. You gotta start from the beginning on this one. Who is Kyle?
So Kyle is just your normal keyboard warrior. It's like, you post something up for sale, everybody wants to get on there and say what it's worth, what it's not worth, talk trash, and so I posted up this Dodge Viper. It had 115,000 miles on it. I bought it out of Hawaii. It was a black GTS that had apparently been on a YouTube video. The guy was doing donuts in a really confined area. It had a big hand lever brake on it, for drifting. The car had been drifted. It had suspension upgrades. It had a roll cage in it and all this stuff.
That's sweet.
And so you knew what that car had been used for. It'd been used what I think all Dodge Vipers should be used for. And so when I posted that car up for sale, this dude Kyle, I'm trying to remember his last name. The last name is funnier than the story. I'll think of it in a minute. And so Kyle gets on the Viper page and posts it up. I remember that car. That car's been holed out and put up wet. And I'm sitting here thinking, why? Why do you need to post that, And so immediately it just ticked a nerve in my brain, because I get so much hate from the Viper community, even the 4GT community when I was doing it. Because if you're on that Viper page, you're wanting to own one or you own one. And the guys that don't own one, and they see, man, he owns 15 of them at one time. They get some hate going on, and it's like, so they want to comment negatively on everything you post. And so when he made his post, I called up my film guy and I was like, look, let's waste the tires off this car and show him this car has been holed out and put up wet. And that's what we did. I had a good time making that video, though.
Hey, anytime you give Andy a reason to tear some tires,
we're gonna tear them up. Yeah, I'm making plans in my head every time something comes in. But the bad part is now is like my negative comments have completely stopped. I think everybody's scared of me making an example out of them on one of my videos. So.
That's good and bad.
Yep.
And there's a you were telling me something. There's a Kyle Facebook group. What is that?
Yeah, so I'd found that out after I made the video, that there's a Facebook page called Kyle's Only. And so the only way you could be a member on this private page is your name has to be Kyle. And so somebody took my video and linked it over to Kyle's Only. And then so I started getting all these Kyles commenting on my video, and I'm like, where the hell are all these Kyles coming from? And somebody was like, that was a Kyle, which is a friend of mine on Facebook. He was like, there's a Kyle's Only page. I shared it on there. I was like, oh my God. And then it's brought out another Kyle that I had issues out of this week, and I had to delete that guy because he's such a moron. But yeah, I've got, Kyles are getting a bad rep off of me right now,
I know.
so.
If your name's Kyle and you're watching this video, we are very sorry.
Yeah, fuck you, Kyle.
Okay, another story that just made me just absolutely geek out was the young man that came to you and wanted to work for you for free.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I had another shop that was Ultra Hot Motorsports over here, and it was downtown. And so this kid come by, he was fresh out of high school, he was working at the movie theaters, and he said, hey, I want to work for you. And I said, well, we're really not hiring right now. And so he was like, all right, cool, and he left. Well, then like 2 weeks later, he come back again. He's like, hey, man, you know, I want to work for you. And I was like, I'm still not hiring. I had 2 guys working for me at the time. It was a small shop. And I said, we're still not hiring. He's like, I'll work for you for free. And I was like, well, I mean, that's incentive for me to hire him. You know, well, let's see what he does. You know, anybody will take free employees. And so he worked for me for a day or two, and I was like, you know, this kid works really good. And then I caught on that, you know, and it's not all bad about him. I caught on, I was like, you know, this kid learns quick too. And so he would sit in my office and learn how I did my buying and selling. And so when I wasn't around, he would actually find cars for me to buy, send them to me, and I would buy them. And I was like, man, this kid's working out really great.
This guy's worth money.
Yeah, but he still lived at home with his parents. I think he was 20, 21 or something like that. His girlfriend come over to the shop all the time and hung out with him.
Oh, he had a girlfriend?
Yeah, he had a girlfriend, and you know, he's kind of a nerdy looking dude. But anyway, so he, you know, so I think that was the reason he wanted to be around the shop. He wanted to be around cool stuff to make himself cooler. And so he still lived at home with his parents, and I think that's where shit went wrong. And so I went into the bathroom one day, and there was shit in the toilet, and we don't have trash can next to it where you throw your tissue paper in, and you know, there's no toilet paper in there as well. And I'm like, fuck, somebody didn't flush their shit or wipe their ass, you know. I'm like, terrible. And so I walked out of there and didn't deal with it because I had another bathroom in my office I generally dealt with unless I was on the other end of the building. And then I guess it was a week or two later I went out there again, and Chris was coming out as I was walking in. Again, shit in the toilet and no toilet paper. And I'm like, God damn, this kid, I guess his mom still flushes the toilet for him or something. And, you know, he doesn't wipe his ass. And I'm like, you know, you start thinking about stuff like, you know, he comes in and sits in your office chair. You know, he hasn't wiped his ass. I mean, that's got to resonate through your pants, you know, after getting swamp ass during the day working in the heat.
Ooh.
And so
it's hot in Texas.
Yeah, he had to go, man.
He had to go.
Yeah, he had to go. I can still smell it now. So
you could if he was walking, you were walking behind him, or
yeah. I mean, it's just yep. Yes, sir.
That is hilarious. And so he became unemployed or
well,
available
yeah,
to the industry.
he became unemployed, and then the story is he went to work for another place here and got found asleep on the job, foot up on the desk, asleep. He got fired from that job, and then he went over to another business that was similar to that one and worked there. And I'd lost track of him, you know, until the other day when I made that video. Somebody told me that a business reached out to hire him, and I said, well, maybe he's doing good if he's got somebody calling him to come work.
Right.
And then it's funny, after I put my story out there, I ran into him the next day in Walmart. So it's kind of awkward because I knew he'd seen my video about it. And I don't talk to him anymore because I had issues with him. But anyway, so it was kind of an odd deal. I think it was more odd for him than me. Absolutely, yep. And it was one of those where you got to the end of the aisle and you went to turn and he was coming around. And so you're just like dead head, you know. You could reach out and touch him and you're like, shit. Sorry, bro. Wipe your ass.
Hey, I didn't say your name. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
Oh my gosh. This is the last question before we go into rapid fire. Do you have any children, or if so, are they in love with cars just like you?
I've got 2 kids. I've got one's fixing to turn 18 the end of this month, and my other one is 12. And you know, they were, you know, as younger kids were into it, would come to the shop and clean cars with me. I think I've got some old YouTube videos of my son was putting hot buttons in a Ford GT on the seats, and you know, my youngest son would come to my office with me and sit in a chair, and he would stare at the cars, and he would say they had pretty eyes, talking about their headlights or whatever. And you know, I enjoyed those days, but I had to go do prison time. And when I got back, you know, we just didn't,
The
you know,
dynamic.
yeah, it just kind of lost it, and I ended up in a divorce, and my oldest son lives with me. My youngest son lives with her, and so my youngest son is not around me enough to be around cars. And then
Gotcha.
my oldest son, you know, he does his own, he's into girls, you know, he's got his own car, his own job, and so that's all
He's
he
living
cares
in his
about.
own world.
He does like cars, you know, but he likes some old weird stuff, you know, so
Hot rod?
stuff that nobody I know would say, I gotta have that car. He's the guy that says, I gotta have that car. And you know, he's into art. You know,
Sure.
flew out to Chicago a couple of times this year for art classes, and I think he'll be a really good artist someday. So
Yeah.
you know, he's into art like I am into cars.
Well, that's awesome to hear. All right, well, let's get into the rapid fire. This has nothing to do with cars.
Okay.
So, would you rather have a higher IQ or photographic memory?
Photographic memory.
Would you rather be invisible or be able to read people's mind?
Oh no, I'd rather read people's mind.
Oh, I think with the deals and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you'd
Yep.
come out on top.
Yep.
Absolutely. This is a good one. Would you rather lose $25,000 or lose all of your phone contacts forever?
Oh, 25 grand. I lost 30 last month like it wasn't shit. So yeah.
Okay.
Take my 25 grand.
What would the number have to be to not lose all your contacts? So I guess we're putting a value on your contacts.
We've discussed that recently. I would say probably $4 million.
Damn.
This phone number is 22 years old and has reached quite a few people. You know,
Absolutely.
there's some contacts in there that people would beg for.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty badass. All right, last question. Would you rather drive a 2012 Prius for the rest of your life or live in the desert in the middle of nowhere?
Oh, it'd be a 12 Prius, even though it wouldn't last the rest of my life.
All right, there we have Andy House here at Area 51 Motorsports. It's been an absolute joy for you to come and chat it up with me. I'll be excited to see what else we can cook up in the near future.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Andy.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.